Welcome back to Scouting Stuff and Happy New Year. I am Scouter Ken. I'm recording from St. Albert, Alberta, and it is just me this week. But that's okay because, like I discussed at the end of last year, I'm trying something a little bit new with Scouting Stuff, trying to change the format up a little bit, and we'll see how that works. As was the case previously, we'll kick things off by discussing a piece of equipment that I find really handy to have with me on a camp. Then we'll move on to some news stories. And this time around, I'm not going to be commenting on any of the news stories directly, like as sort of the extended part of the episode, but I do have a meeting suggestion or a multi-meeting suggestion that I want to go through with all of you. And then we'll end it with a bit of a survival tip. With that in mind, let's get right into it and right onto a useful piece of gear. Now, there's not any one sleeping bag that I care to recommend because there's many different brands of sleeping bag out there. Some are more expensive than others. But obviously, if you're going camping, you should take a sleeping bag with you. The trick, though, with a sleeping bag is, well, there's a few. There's the weight of the sleeping bag to consider. There's the size of the sleeping bag to consider because not all of them pack down to an equally small form factor. And there's the temperature rating of the sleeping bag, too. I can't count the number of times I've seen scouts show up to a camp with a sleeping bag that is temperature rated for a completely different season than the one that they're camping in. And while you would think that I'm mostly talking about scouts showing up with sleeping bags that don't provide enough warmth that night, and that does happen, it also sometimes goes in the other direction where I see scouts showing up to camp with a sleeping bag that's rated for like, say, minus 20 Celsius, but it's going to be 25 Celsius overnight. That is plus 25 Celsius overnight. And that is also not the correct bag to use in that scenario. You'll boil, essentially, be way too warm in that kind of setup. And so, like I say, I don't really have a particular brand of sleeping bag that I favor. There's many out there, and I own many different brands myself. But the selection of a sleeping bag, and realistically, like, unless you live in a place where the climate is basically stable all year, you probably actually are going to need at least a couple of different sleeping bags. I probably have about 3 myself that I use depending on what season I'm going camping in. And these need to take the temperature ranges that you're likely to encounter into account. And I usually recommend to go about 5 degrees warmer than whatever the sleeping bag says. So if the sleeping bag says that it's rated until like 0 centigrade, assume that it really is not going to be useful much colder than 5 centigrade. If it says it's minus 20, minus 15. But there is, still that general consideration like, okay, you're going camping. Great, cool. What's the temperature going to be? Not just during the daytime, although that's worth considering too for other reasons, but what's the temperature going to be overnight? What's the temperature going to drop to once the sun goes away? Because that's the temperature rating that you should aim for with your sleeping bag. And as will probably not surprise, sleeping bags that have a lower temperature rating, i.e. can go to lower temperatures, have much more insulation in them. So they pack bigger, they weigh more. So you have to take that into account too when you're figuring out how everything is going to fit into your backpack or onto your backpack. Yeah, if you're going camping in the summer, there's some really great lightweight hiking sleeping bags that you can get, which are, they will work for most of the temperatures you're likely to encounter in sort of your average summer. But if you're going camping in the winter, and scouts here in Canada do, well, then you're definitely going to need to think differently about what you bring. It's also worth mentioning that, don't treat sleeping bags as like an isolated thing, the only thing that you sleep in, right? If you're bringing your campfire blanket or like some other kind of blanket to camp with you, you can definitely tuck that into your sleeping bag if you need a little bit extra warmth. Make sure you have something between the sleeping bag and the ground, whether it's a foamy or an air mattress. But that is the gear tip that I wanted to offer this time, is just make sure that you have a sleeping bag or several sleeping bags at home that fit the temperature ranges that you're likely to encounter when you're going on adventures, either by yourself or with your scout troop. Because if you live in a place like I do, where essentially the coldest temperature we see in winter and the warmest temperature we see in summer, there's 70 to 80 degrees between them. You will definitely not find a one sleeping bag to fit all of those scenarios. You will not find the one bag to rule them all, so to speak. You'll need to have a warm weather bag. You'll need to have a cold weather bag. And you'll need to have a, wow, it is legitimately freezing out here bag. Preferably, though, you're going to want to find a bag that fits. You're going to want to find a range of sleeping bags that fit into your backpack or onto your backpack, right? They strap on well, or they fit inside the cavernous expanse of the inside space of the backpack. I know these days it's pretty common for scouts to roll into camps with, they've got their backpack on and it's full of stuff. And then, maybe they're carrying the sleeping bag under their arm. And if that's, how you typically do camping, that's fine. That's sometimes how it is for me as well. I do try as much as possible to encourage my scouts and all of you out there to fit it all into one bag, fit it all into your backpack. Because, well, it gets you thinking about what do you actually really, really, really need to pack. It really gets you thinking about optimizing for weight, optimizing for space. And the sleeping bag is going to be a big, big part of what takes up space in your backpack. So just really, really, challenge yourself. Try and find something that fits into your backpack along with everything else that you absolutely need for a camp. Doesn't weigh too much, doesn't weigh you down too much. Something that you're not going to have to just sling under your arm when all is said and done. And the only other thought I have about sleeping bags is just pay attention to how you're supposed to put them away. These days, a lot of sleeping bags you can just stuff into their, into the carrying bag that they have. And certainly all the ones that I own work that way. But there are some sleeping bags out there where to preserve the integrity of the insulation, you need to roll them. So just make sure that you're cognizant of that when you're choosing out a sleeping bag. All right, let's get into some news. Well, it sounds like a bunch of scouts had a grand old time in Cali just before the Christmas season set in. That would be Cali in, I believe, Colombia, not shorthand for California. Quoting Scout.org. The city of Cali has become the Scout epicenter of the Americas. Since 27th December, more than 2,000 children and young people from different countries across the continent have pitched their tents at Comfendi Panche to launch Jam Camp 2025, the year's most significant regional camp that merges two experiences into one, the Camporee for scouts aged 11 to 14 and the Jamboree for young people aged 14 to 17. Over 7 days, participants will experience something that goes beyond traditional camping. The program includes tours of Cali's most iconic locations, salsa workshops, community service projects, and the opportunity to immerse themselves in the traditional Feria de Cali. Everything is designed so the scouts not only discover Colombia, but also experience its culture firsthand whilst strengthening the bonds that unite them as a continental movement. Jam Camp 2025 is not just a camp, it's a living manifestation of the motto that inspires it, Americas United for Peace. Until the 2nd of January, these young people will demonstrate that cultural diversity, shared values, and a commitment to a better world can be built from tents, campfires, and friendships that transcend borders. End quote. Actually, it seems like there were a lot of different events going on to wrap up the year, as evidenced by the fact that the 3rd Arab Para Jamboree also took place in December in Morocco. Quoting Scout.org again. Scouts from across the Arab region gathered to celebrate diversity and inclusion at the 3rd Arab Para Jamboree, a unique event for young people of all abilities held from 6 to 14 December 2025 in Rabat, Morocco. Organized by the Moroccan Scout Federation in partnership with the Arab Scout Region and the Arab Scout Organization, and held under the high patronage of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, the camp welcomed around 150 young participants. Throughout the week, participants took part in an engaging program featuring educational and cultural workshops, adventure and exploration activities, team building, games, and field visits to discover Morocco's cultural and national heritage. Each activity was designed not only to be fun, but also to build on Scouting's core values of collaboration, empathy, and mutual respect. By working together, the Scouts developed their skills, discovered new talents, and challenged stereotypes, paving the way for a more inclusive society. End quote. I wasn't kidding when I said that the end of the year was kind of a big wrap-up for everybody, and especially in the Southern Hemisphere, where it's more summertime now than wintertime up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Because the 33rd Asia-Pacific Regional Scout Jamboree also took place in the Philippines. Quoting Scout.org again. Around 24,000 scouts from across the Asia-Pacific region are gathering at Camp Zambales, Philippines, to take part in the 33rd Asia-Pacific Regional Scout Jamboree. Under the theme Be Prepared, Scouts for Peace and Sustainable Development, the Regional Jamboree runs until the 21st of December and brings together young people aged 12 to 17 years old to build international friendship, strengthen leadership skills, and learn through cultural exchange, skill development, and community service. Over the week-long event, Scouts from 18 countries are taking part in a wide range of outdoor, cultural, and educational activities related to peace, sustainable development, and community engagement. From abseiling, hiking, and Zumba to quieter moments of yoga and meditation, the program offers opportunities for both active participation and personal reflection. End quote. Now, I can't recall exactly when, but I know I've talked about Boranka before on the podcast. It's come up in the news, probably in a Scouting 5 episode from way, way back when. It's an initiative of the Scout and Guide Association of Croatia, and it has evidently been awarded the 2025 Intercultural Achievement Award in the category of sustainability. Quoting Scout.org. World Scouting is proud to celebrate the Scout and Guide Association of Croatia's environmental initiative, Boranka, which has been awarded the 2025 Intercultural Achievement Award, IAA, in the category of sustainability. The recognition, presented annually by the Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs of Austria, highlights global projects that foster dialogue, cooperation, and positive social impact across cultures. Now in its 12th edition, the Intercultural Achievement Award received applications from more than 300 organizations worldwide. Boranka stood out to an independent international jury for its creative approach to environmental restoration, community mobilization, and cross-border collaboration. Boranka, now the largest volunteer-led reforestation campaign in Europe, was established in 2018 as a response to the devastating wildfires in Dalmatia. Since then, more than 11,000 volunteers have taken part, planting over 130,000 seedlings, acorns, and seeds in fire-affected areas. Its success is built on an innovative blend of ecological action, youth engagement, and strong partnerships between civil society, public institutions, and the private sector. End quote. And I haven't really done a story, in a little while. I mean, granted, I haven't done too many Scouting 5 episodes in a little while, and they've kind of gone away in favor of this new format. But guess I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the Scouts of Jamaica doing some work to support their community in the wake of a hurricane. Quoting Scout.org. On the 28th of October 2025, Hurricane Melissa made landfall as a Category 5 storm, affecting the parishes of St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, and St. James in western Jamaica. More than 400,000 people were impacted by the storm, which destroyed homes, power lines, and infrastructure across the region. In the immediate aftermath, families lost homes and belongings. Hundreds of children found themselves without clothes, school supplies, or other basic resources needed to return to class once schools reopened. From the first day, volunteers from the Scout Association of Jamaica have been collecting and distributing drinking water and aid packages to affected communities. Now, as schools begin to reopen, the association has launched the Backpacks of Hope initiative to help students return to class. The program aims to provide 150 backpacks and educational supplies to children aged 6 to 17 in the most affected areas. Children will receive notebooks and exercise books, writing and drawing materials including pencils, pens, crayons, rulers, and sharpeners, basic hygiene items, and a sturdy backpack in which to carry them all. The Scout Association is coordinating the initiative in partnership with schools, local authorities, and community organizations. Volunteers are ready to pack and distribute each backpack with routes mapped out as the recipients identified in the affected communities. End quote. That's a little bit backdated as news goes, but again, always cool to see Scout organizations around the world leaping into action the minute disaster strikes. In slightly more current news, the Girl Scouts in the U.S. have launched yet another cookie season, and apparently the Explore More's cookie is making its debut. I gather it's like a s'more-like cookie, but Rocky Road Ice Cream inspired sandwich cookie. It's got some chocolate, marshmallow, toasted almond flavored cream in there. We don't really have anything quite so exciting as that up here in Canada, but if you want to learn a little bit more about the cookie, there'll be a link in the show notes. And I'm not going to quote directly from this article, except to note that yet another young man has achieved the distinction of getting all of the merit badges in the Scouting America program. Evidently, this was actually achieved last year, but I'm only now just kind of seeing the news pop up because he actually achieved the last badge back in March, just before he turned 18. But evidently, he was able to get all of the badges in the Scouting America program, of which there are apparently now 140. So I think it was in the 130s last time someone did this, so they've added a few since then. But at any rate, congratulations to Mr. Hayes on your achievement, and just a reminder out there to all you Scouts that you can still earn badges, and we encourage you to do so. It's actually really cool when you do. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, and then many times, but if there's a Scout group in your area, chances are they need volunteers. So if you're not already volunteering with them, please do consider joining. The article that I'm actually going to include in the show notes talks about a Scouter who has given 50 years to a particular Scout group. This is from the Jersey Evening Post. Quote, "A Scout leader has recently celebrated a huge milestone as she picked up an award commemorating 50 years of voluntary service. Christine Merritt was presented with the Chief Scout's 50-Year Service Award on New Year's Eve, having first joined the 2nd Jersey Scout Group in August of 1975. She was presented the certificate by Glenn Middleis, the island lead volunteer for Jersey Scouts. Explaining her journey with the youth movement, Jersey Scouts said Christine first got involved with the Jersey Scout Band in 1972, following in the footsteps of her husband, Mick. The pair have both been involved with the band ever since, performing in the UK and Europe. After the award presentation, Jersey Scouts said to Mrs. Merritt, "Thank you, Akela," her Scout leader title, "for all you do for scouting at the 2nd Jersey and Jersey Scouts. It is very much appreciated." End quote. So for the discussion part of the episode, I wanted to put out a meeting idea. And admittedly, this is kind of a dry run for me too, because I'm going to be trying to do this with my Cubs in the near future. It's something I did with the Beaver Scouts, a decade ago, and it worked amazingly well. But then I tried to do it again with my Cub Scouts a few years later, and it fizzled. So admittedly, there's a bit of read the room involved in this, because not every Cub pack, not every scout group, not every beaver colony is going to be able to pick up and run with this idea as ably as I've seen happen. But equally, with the right group and with a little bit of priming, let's say, this is something that could work really, really well, and it's actually super, super fun. And that is game design. And I don't mean video games, I mean board games. If you want to do this as a meeting, the best structure I can offer you is that you actually need 3 meetings. The first one is really just all about playing games. And it could be board games, it could be, wide games. The point is, you need to get the youth to play games. You need to encourage them to play games after the meeting and throughout the rest of the week. And the reason for this is because you really want to just, like I say, prime them, kind of get them into that game-focused mindset. So devote one meeting just to games, just to playing games. Let the youth have fun. Once you've done that, your second meeting has 2 parts. And I will say, first off, in terms of equipment, you're going to need pencils, you're going to need erasers, pencil crayons or markers, and you're going to need very large pieces of paper. I actually recommend what made this such a great success with the Beavers, I think, when we did it, was my father-in-law had actually given us a couple of rolls of dining table paper. So like the big rolls of paper that you'd use to, serve as essentially an impromptu tablecloth for like group dining halls or restaurants or whatever. So we had a couple of rolls of that, and we weren't really using it for anything else, but it was perfect to just roll out on the floor and let the kids scribble all over. It worked amazingly well. So that's in terms of what you need. That's what you need for equipment. But what is the actual structure of the meeting? Well, there's 2 parts to it. The first is about a 15-minute talk about what even is a game. And then the rest is just letting them go nuts with designing a game. For the first part of the meeting, there's a really great book. It's actually published in, I think, 2012 by Werbach and Hunter. I'll see if I can find the title for it. But basically, it splits the concept of a game into 3 key elements: components, mechanics, and dynamics. Or, for lack of a better way of putting it, the pieces, the way you play, and the story. That's a bit of an oversimplification, because the game components can be more than just the actual pieces, but they do include the pieces, right? So this would be, your game board, the dice, the spinner, the little character figures that you move around the board. Cards could be the components. But if you think about it in terms of other games, what are the components in, say, tag? Well, that's the actual kids themselves running around. What are the components in Capture the Flag? Well, again, it's the kids themselves plus the flag and whatever tree they've hidden it in. The mechanics, meanwhile, are the actual how of playing the game. So, you roll the dice and you move your character. That's a mechanic. You cross that center line and try and find the other team's flag, but then you get tagged and taken to jail. That's a mechanic. The point of the mechanics is basically they define how the different components of the game interact. And it's the mechanics that really make the fun of the game. And the important part of any game is to have a fun mechanic. You can have the best story in the world. You can have the best looking game pieces in the world. But if the mechanics are boring, players are not going to connect with the game. And usually a mechanic should have some kind of feedback loop, right? I do an action, I take an action, and then something happens, right? Like I draw a card, or I get some coins, or I get to take that guy to jail, whatever. The point is, there's sort of that feedback loop of, action and reward that kind of just keeps going again and again and again. It's supposed to be repeatable. And that's really what keeps the game moving along. And then finally, the game dynamics. And this is the big picture of the game. This is, why are we even playing the game? If you're playing Candyland, the dynamic of Candyland is ultimately you're just trying to make it to that big candy house at the end of the game. If you're playing Capture the Flag, the dynamic of the game, the story of the game is that, you're trying to get the other team's flag and bring it back to yours. But it's a little bit more than just story too. Dynamics are also like the way that the game can shift and evolve over time. If you think about like a tag game and all of a sudden, most of the players have been tagged and they're out of the game and there's only a couple of people left. Like I say, it's freeze tag, right? And then all of a sudden, one of the players just goes on this absolute streak and is able to like unfreeze 5 other players. That's a dynamic shift in the game. And there's lots of different pieces to dynamics, things like, unpredictability and what you want to avoid and what is the meaning of all of this and what are you achieving? And then on top of that, there is kind of a fourth element, and it's the actual aesthetics of the game, right? Are you going for, are you going for like a retro look? Are you going for a futuristic look? This doesn't always apply in every case. It definitely applies in terms of video games, and a lot of board games, are looking for a particular aesthetic as well, right? Monopoly doesn't look like Candyland, it doesn't look like Battleship. But not every game is going to be as concerned with aesthetics. Aesthetics and Capture the Flag, it really doesn't matter that much. So that's the first part of the second meeting. Remember, the first meeting, just let them play games. And in the second meeting, you sit down and you have this 15-minute discussion about these core components of a game. And then if you have a little bit of time, try and, tease out like, okay, well, last week you were playing this. What are the different components of that game? What are the mechanics of that game? What are the dynamics of that game? And like I say, not more than 15 minutes because you will lose the audience. When we did this the first time, we actually had some game designers from BioWare come out and chat with the Beavers. And they did an amazing job of just keeping it just really on track, really concise presentation. The kids were very engaged. And then they turned them loose. And that's the second part of the meeting. And what made it really work was they told the kids to pick a game that they all knew. And each colony picked a different game because we did this twice. But their key advice was take a game you already know, start with that, and then just start changing things about it. What kind of changes can you make to the components? What kind of changes can you make to the mechanics? What kind of changes can you make to the dynamics, to the story of the game? What kind of changes can you make to the aesthetics of the game? And essentially, you just keep iterating those changes until you have a different game. And you could see the magic happen when it happened because it was literally a case of we just rolled the paper out for the Beavers and they just started talking. And I think they, like the one colony settled on using Candyland as their template, right? And then they wanted to change the setting. So it became a space game. And then, well, how do we move back and forth? And where are the different points on the map that we should be able to move between? And like, how do we what's even the goal of this game? And so it became a very different thing. It became its own thing. And I remember the conversation in the parking lot afterwards where Chris and Brad, 2 of the 3 designers from BioWare, pulled me aside and they're just like, it can take us like 6 weeks to 6 months to design like game systems for within a single game. Those kids just built an entire game in 45 minutes. And they did. It was really impressive to see. And then for the third meeting is all about play testing. So you kind of just roll up all the paper, keep the markers, keep the pencils and erasers. You bring it back next week, and you actually have the Beavers now try and play the game that they've made. I said Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, whatever. Try and have the youth play the game they've made and see what works and see what doesn't. Because you know what? Nobody gets it right on the first try. So maybe they realize, we got to change the rule here a little bit, or we got to make an adjustment here, or, maybe it would work better if we change this part of the board so it did this instead. Whatever the case may be. Devote that third meeting to play testing. And then, once that's all said and done, well, at that point, they should have a pretty functional game. And hopefully someone's been taking notes and writing all the rules down. Now, when we did this with the Beavers, I spent pretty much the entire season of Lent in Photoshop building game art assets. And eventually got that printed. So kind of our first meeting back after Easter, I was able to hand the kids like, hey, here's a board game that you designed. And it was printed nicely in a box. I'm not saying you have to go all out like that, but you do have, the option of if you did want to put the challenge out there to the youth or to like some older youth or, devote additional meetings to actually building the artwork for the game, making it look nice, not just scribbles on paper. You could definitely do that too. Or you could take it on yourself and just, turn the scribbles into nice looking things. And if you want to get them printed, you can. There are some game printing services that will do small runs of printed games, not ask you for like a minimum order of 500. Or you can just put the templates out there for people to download and print at home. Like I say, it's not going to work for every troop. It's not going to work for every pack. It's not going to work for every beaver colony. When it does, though, it works like amazingly well. And it is definitely something that is worth trying. If you think, you have youth that are that sort of that right blend of like energetic, but also creative. They can be attentive when they need to so that you can actually like explain some ideas to them, but then you can turn them loose and they can kind of just self-organize and make things happen without too much additional interference from you, from the scouters. And it's a great thing to have for places where the weather does occasionally force you indoors. We get cold snaps up here. And so this was a really great set of meetings to run in January because it was minus 30 outside. Like we're not going to have the kids outside for an hour at minus 30. And I mean, hey, if you need to fill 3 meetings in a row, this is a great way to do it. All right, let's talk survival tips. No news story attached to this one. This is just a really great principle that we do try to teach all of the youth that come through the Scouts Canada program. But if you've never heard of it before, the concept is really simple. It's called Hug a Tree. And it's really all about what to do if all of a sudden you find yourself lost as part of a group outing, or even just in general. This is a really good principle to apply for any youth to apply in any situation where they end up lost, because the easiest way to be found again is to not move around too much, unless you absolutely have to. The main principles of Hug a Tree are, first off, to any of the youth listening to this, if you're going on an adventure with or without your scout troop, cub pack, whatever, please tell an adult where you're going. At least give them some idea of where you might be. But if it should so happen that you end up lost, you're out with a hike with your cub pack, or you're just off playing with your friends, and all of a sudden you end up separated from the group and you don't quite know where you are, hug a tree and stay put. Now, if you're actually hiking in a forest, there will be actual trees available. If you are not in a forest, any static object will do. A light post, a slide at the playground, whatever the case may be. Find something that isn't going to be moving. Goalposts on a soccer field, ball diamond, something that's, planted in the ground. It's not going to be moving. And just stay by it. That's the first thing to do. If you ever find yourself lost, just find something and stay beside it. Something that isn't going to move. And then make sure you're warm and dry. So hopefully if you've gone out for an adventure, you've dressed for the weather. And as I always recommend to people, take extra socks. Not saying you have to take extra socks if you're going on a bike ride with your friends, but, just make sure that you're able to stay warm and dry. Now, this may sometimes require you to pick a slightly different place to remain in place. You may have to pick a slightly different place to stay put. If it's raining, or if it looks like it's going to rain, maybe hugging a soccer post in the middle of an open field is not your first best choice if there's something nearby that can offer you a little bit of cover. Obviously, you shouldn't stand under a tree in a thunderstorm. That's frowned upon too. But if there's like a building nearby, like a school or something with a bit of an overhang that, you can just stand under and stay out of the rain. Or, if there's some place that seems a little bit more sheltered, if you're in the middle of a forest, do as best as possible. Try to keep yourself warm and dry. And if you are going on a hike in a forest, make sure you have your, little emergency kit along with things like, a emergency poncho or a emergency blanket in it, right? A little aluminum foil thing, or that little plastic bag that you can just kind of, with the hood that you can wear. They're not just for the rides at Disneyland, although they were fantastically useful on the rides at Disneyland too. And the last thing is help the searchers if you hear them, right? If you hear people calling after you, calling your name, call back, let them know where you are. Say, I'm over here, this way. If you have a whistle, blow the whistle so they can hear you. But importantly, let them come to you. Don't run towards them, because especially like in a forest and stuff, sound travels, but it can be a little bit tricky to actually figure out which direction a sound is coming from, and your ears might deceive you a little bit. So even in the case where you can hear them and they're moving through the trees and they're moving through the forest and they're looking for you and you can hear them calling out to you, you stay put and you make a noise and let them find you. Okay? So quickly review the rules of Hug a Tree. First, tell an adult where you're going. If you're lost, hug a tree and stay put. Keep warm and dry. And if you need to move to find shelter, move once and then stay put. And then help the searchers find you. Make noise. If you hear people calling out to you, call back. But again, stay where you are. Let them find you. That's it. That is how you hug a tree to survive. And that is all I have for you this week. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, be prepared.